How would you describe your own political philosophy?
My own political philosophy. So I kind of have like these very fundamental moral positions. And then from there, I try to just build out like, what are the policy positions I think that would make the world the best for the most amount of people? So right now I tend to be like, I'm very liberal with a capital L. So no socialism, fascism, whatever. I'm very liberal with a capital L. I very much appreciate like rights to private property, free speech and all of that. Very much a capitalist. I think that that form of economic organization does a really good job at allocating money to different sectors very efficiently. Very big on like social democracy. I think that the government should be involved in kind of like funneling and channeling a lot of the desires of society. So providing incentives for green energy so that capital markets can invest appropriately. Yeah, I'm pretty open socially. Like I'm cool with LGBT people and all that. Very big on free speech. Like I think that platforms are probably a little bit too heavy-handed right now in banning and censoring people for ideas they don't want discussed. Yeah, I kind of am.
What are these fundamental moral positions that you have? Like some of the main biggest ones or most important ones that you hold closest to you that you develop these political ideologies from?
At the very, 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 very fundamental level, like I perceive myself as a person that has some set of preferences or desires. I perceive that everybody else is about like 99% matched on those. We all basically want the same thing. And then from there, I try to like build out like what are the things and agreements that I can make with other people to make sure that all of us are kind of like working together in a way that keeps everybody as happy and healthy and functional as possible. So everything kind of builds out from there.
Kind of utilitarian?
I mean, you could argue that, sure.
Where do you think you got those beliefs from?
I think when I was like 16, 17, I used to be really Catholic growing up. And I kind of lost my religion through high school, just through whatever normal growing process, asking questions, not getting satisfactory answers. And in the process of kind of losing that religious foundation for life, I kind of had to think of what other foundation I could find. I read a lot of Ayn Rand, and I realized after like a year of that, that I really liked it. And then at the end, I was like, well, maybe I just like this because I read the first author after becoming an atheist, and this is just who I happen to like. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to put that aside, and I'm really going to think for myself, like, what do I think is important in life? What do I think is important for other people? And I try to figure out kind of like these fundamental principles, and then any political position, rather than inheriting it from like some political group or my family or my country or whatever, I try to think the best of like, well, what do I think is like a good universal rule for society to make people happy and healthy?
Have you always been a really deep thinker like that?
I don't know if I'd say as a deep thinker, but I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of a geek and nerd, I guess, yeah.
But you seem kind of like a skeptic to certain things. Like if you hear some sort of information like the Ayn Rand thing, like you kind of supported it, but then you beg the question to yourself, like, well, do I really support this? Like you said, because it's the first book that you read after becoming atheist or whatever. What in you do you think causes you to be so critical or open-minded, I would say, to those things? Like questioning your own ideology, questioning the other things that people tell you. Is it something that maybe a value your parents instilled in you when you were a child, or is it just maybe the way you biologically are?
I'm going to be honest. I got really lucky. I took an AP psychology class in high school. And that class, like half the class is just learning about how much your brain lies to you about things, like the different biases you have, the different ways you search for information, the different ways you remember selectively certain things. And that class combined with me becoming an atheist and then engaging with other people that were still very religious. So I saw that like I can't really trust my own brain 100%. And I see other people can have very strong convictions about things that I think they're totally dumb on, they're completely wrong on. So in my mind, I try to have this like underlying sense of not paranoia or self-doubt, but like for every, I try to have like good mechanisms in place to make sure that I'm not like getting lost down some dumb shit, I guess. So like here's like a couple of like things that I try to keep in mind. When I'm arguing for a certain debate or arguing a certain position, I always know the arguments on the other side in their best, most powerful steelman form. So oftentimes when I'm debating people, I usually is their side of the argument better than them because I've spent so much time going back and forth on it, because I think if you don't understand the opposing argument, then your argument could have a lot of flaws, or you could be missing something that you're not aware of. That's one thing. A second thing is even if I've got a lot of conviction about a certain thing, I'll always ask myself, like, if I feel like I've got a lot of conviction, I'm finding with a lot of people, sometimes I'll tell me like, what would it take to change my mind on a certain position? And if I don't have an answer to that immediately, then I'll realize like my conviction here is too strong if I can't even think of something that would change my mind. Yeah, but there's like a lot of things like that. I just kind of try to audit my brain a lot, especially now being like an online content creator. It's the easiest way to get lost in like an echo chamber of bullshit where you discredit every outside voice and you just like circle jerk with your own people and you would never consider anything different. Yeah.
How often do you change your beliefs?
I mean, hopefully not too often, otherwise I wouldn't have any. I mean, like, it really depends on the thing. Like, over time, like, so I've evolved and changed in some beliefs. Sometimes I'll get posed a really good question or argument, and it'll cause a pretty dramatic shift on something. But, I mean, my beliefs are, like, fair. My fundamental beliefs have been relatively stable, probably for about 15 years. But how those play out in the abstract have changed pretty significantly for a few things. So like for instance, like probably the biggest thing that two huge things I've changed on is one, I used to be like my single issue for voting was Citizens United. I thought that lobbying and like finance of elections was like the most important issue in the United States. I had a lot of arguments with a conservative friend over Citizens United, and post that case. Oh, and then I actually read what the court case was about, which apparently nobody does. After reading about the court case, and then after thinking about it, I realized this is a really, really, really difficult question. And I actually don't think lobbying has anywhere near the impact on policies in the US that most people think it does. So like that's something I dramatically changed my mind on.